Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Office of Tax Appeals, or OTA. My name is Stephen Kim, and I am the lead administrative law judge, or ALJ, for this oral hearing. Before we begin, I'd like to do a quick mic check just to make sure I can hear everyone. Starting with Mr. Taube, can you just say a quick hello?
Hello, everybody.
Hi. And respondent FTB, can I just make sure your mics are working? I can hear you.
Good morning.
Great. Okay, today's hearing will be live streamed on YouTube, and this hearing will be auto-transcribed by Zoom. To ensure we have an accurate record, I ask that each person speak clearly, one at a time, and avoid speaking over one another. OTA is not a court. We are an independent and impartial appeals body staffed by subject matter experts. We are independent of any tax agency, including the Franchise Tax Board. While OTA is not a court, we must nevertheless follow certain guidelines to conduct an orderly hearing and to ensure that we establish a proper record on which the opinion will be based. Each party will have the opportunity to be heard, so please wait for your turn to make your presentation. Keeping the hearing on track and creating a clean and efficient hearing record is part of my role as the lead ALJ. So I may interrupt the hearing if we get out of order or become counterproductive. Before we go on the record, are there any questions about anything I've just said?
I have none.
Okay,
No questions here.
great. Okay, so co-panelist, Judge Fasig, are you ready to proceed?
I am.
And Judge Long?
Yes, thank you for asking.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now we are going on the record. This is the appeal of S. Taube, OTA case number 2308-14123. The date is April 23rd, 2025. And the time is 9:27 a.m. This hearing is being held electronically with the agreement of both parties. I am Judge Stephen Kim. I will be the lead ALJ for purposes of conducting this hearing. My co-panelists, Judge Amanda Vasig and Judge Keith Long, and I are equal participants in deliberating and determining the outcome of this appeal. Let's do a quick introduction. Parties, can you please state your name and your title, starting with appellant? Mr. Taube, can you just state your name?
Sorry, it says Seth Taube.
Okay, and for respondent Franchise Tax Board?
Arthur Ramalingam.
And I'm Cynthia Kent, an attorney supervisor with the Franchise Tax Board.
As stated in my minutes and orders, the issue to be decided in this appeal is whether appellant has established reasonable cause to abate the mandatory e-payment penalty for the 2020 tax year. Mr. Taube, do you agree that this is the issue in this appeal? Mr. Taube? Mr. Taube? Did we lose you for a second?
I believe, yeah, I'm sorry. I do.
Okay. And respondent, do you agree that's the issue?
Yes, I agree.
Thank you. Appellant did not submit any exhibits. Respondent submitted exhibits A through P. Appellant did not object to the admissibility of these exhibits. Therefore, exhibits A through P are now admitted into evidence. Mr. Taube, you indicated during the pre-hearing conference that you may testify as a witness. Will you be testifying today as a witness?
I will not.
Okay. So anything you say today will be considered arguments and will not constitute evidence. All right, let's begin appellant's presentation. Mr. Taube, you will have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you all for your time today and the opportunity to speak briefly. As Judge Kim gestured at, kind of respectfully requesting the abatement of the $36,264.30 penalty that was assessed for the tax year 2020. This penalty was triggered by my use of tech to pay a $3.6 million tax liability to the state rather than making it in my prior submissions. And it was not an attempt by me to avoid compliance with any of the tax code, but rather an error made during what was a profoundly difficult time in my life that I shared in my appeal. And just briefly to recapitulate that, it was during that time there were multiple stressors in my life. There was a business failure that gave rise to that phantom income of 3.6 million. So it was not accompanied by any liquidity. Was approaching the end of a very complicated, long, drawn-out divorce process, and that was kind of COVID-related health issues, including type 1 diabetes and hypertension. So that was it was during that time that I had changed CPA firms, and periodically, as I recall, I would make payments with a voucher and a check. And candidly, in the past, I'm not sure I was aware of the e-payment regulation, but I'm not here to reject the purpose of that regulation or law. I understand that the 1% penalty is assessed, designed to encourage electronic compliance. I presume to improve efficiency and reduce processing costs of the FTB. So I'm not here to dispute that. But in this case, I'm here to just request
Mr. Taube, your connection is a little
$6,000.
shaky. Can you repeat the last sentence you're saying?
Yeah, I was saying that, I'm not here to reject the purpose of the law and understand what I believe is to, encourage electronic compliance, improve efficiency, and kind of reduce costs for the FTB. But I'm just here to ask, I believe the spirit of the law seems to be overshadowed by its application. And I would just say out loud that a $36,000 penalty for using the wrong payment method when no taxes went unpaid and no intent to circumvent any of the rules existed, it just feels unduly burdensome and out of proportion, hence my appeal. I did submit a waiver request and a claim for a refund when I realized this error, and it was denied on the grounds that I had, partially, I guess, denied because I had pre-year e-payment these far back 2009, which the staff has alerted me and the appeals board to. If you look at the those were really sporadic in many ways and trivial, often under $100 or maybe a few $1,000s. And none of those prior instances flagged the possibility that for me, that a payment method could one day carry a five-figure penalty. Honestly, I'm not sure I even noticed those previous penalties. I was focused on making my payments, and I had received a paper voucher from my account. So I look at what's the purpose of an appeals process, if not to look closely at the application of rules and determine if they aligned with fairness and the original legislative intent. And to the staff that prepared the brief, I offer my respect. They did their job in interpreting the law strictly. But I also believe that the purpose of this process is to try to see the forest, or not miss the forest for the trees. It's really, this appeal is really not about technical compliance or my argument. It's just about the human side of tax administration. I definitely made a mistake, but the penalty imposed in this context seems excessive and, candidly misaligned with the reasonable cause standard. I trust, this body's brings thoughtful discretion to bear, and especially, where kind of an inflexible process could result in inequity, which I believe is the case here. So I'm here to ask with sincerity and humility that the penalty be abated. I've paid many millions of dollars to the state of California over the years in good faith, and I'm just simply requesting compassion and common sense now in this singular instance during a time when my life was in many ways unraveling on a lot of fronts, and the evidence for which I've presented in my original appeal. So with that, I'll stop and thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Taube. Respondent, do you have any questions for Mr. Taube?
No, we do not have any questions.
Judge Basig or Judge Long, do you have any questions for Mr. Taube?
I do not have any questions at this time. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you.
I just had a quick question. So I saw that other e-pay penalties were imposed in previous years. In 2011, 12, 13, 14, and 2021. Were you aware that those penalties were imposed on you?
Honestly, I have an accountant that prepares my returns, and I think I got in the habit of sending a check and didn't really pay attention to those penalties. So this was the first time that I was aware that we mandatorily had to file value payment.
Okay, and I believe you stated in your opening brief that you were instructed to make a payment electronically.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I get my tax return with a front cover that lists the amount and then the address of the franchise tax board. And I'm maybe a little bit old-fashioned from writing checks and putting them in envelopes. I probably should have been aware of the e-payment regulation, but it was just an honest mistake. I guess presumably each time that I had done that.
Okay, thank you. All right, respondent, FTB is not presenting any witnesses and they will only be arguing the appeal. Respondent, you have 10 minutes for your presentation. Please proceed when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Arthi Ramalingam. With me is my co-counsel, Cynthia Kent, and we represent the Franchise Tax Board in this matter. The issue in this appeal is whether the appellant has established reasonable cause to abate the mandatory e-pay penalty imposed for his failure to remit his estimate payment electronically. The law states that taxpayers are required to make e-payments when either their estimated tax or extension payment exceeds $20,000 or their tax return has a total tax liability greater than $80,000. Once the e-pay requirement is triggered, the law requires taxpayers to make all future payments electronically. Taxpayers who are required to make e-payments but fail to do so are subject to a mandatory e-pay penalty of 1% of the relevant tax payment. In the precedential opinion in the appeal of Porreca, the OTA held that taxpayer bears the burden of proving reasonable cause to abate the e-pay penalty. To establish reasonable cause, the taxpayer must show that the failure to pay electronically occurred despite the exercise of ordinary business care and prudence. Appellant made an estimate payment for the 2009 tax year in the amount of $50,000, creating the requirement that all of his future payments be made electronically. Here, the appellant made an extension payment by check for $3.6 million. Since the amount was paid by check, it triggered a 1% e-pay penalty in the amount of $36,000. Appellant argues he is entitled to abatement of the penalty based on reasonable cause due to various personal hardships, including a divorce as well as health issues. However, he has not provided any evidence to support his assertions that his personal hardships prevented him from exercising ordinary business care and prudence to ensure that his payment was made in accordance with the law. Appellant also argues that he did not meet the threshold amounts for the e-pay penalty in the past, and therefore the penalty should not have been imposed. Appellant also states that this was his first time he mistakenly sent a check rather than e-payment to pay his tax, and that he had not previously made an estimate or extension payment exceeding $20,000, nor did he have a previous tax liability which exceeded $80,000. However, FTB records indicate that the appellant has been required to make his payment electronically since 2009, and he has previously incurred and paid several e-pay penalties prior to the one at issue. In order to stop the e-pay requirement and prevent the mandatory e-pay penalty, a taxpayer must either request and receive a waiver prior to remitting the payment or make a prior election to discontinue e-pay where the taxpayer can establish that the prior tax year liability did not meet the e-pay requirement thresholds. Since July 31st, 2009, appellant has been required to make all payments electronically. Appellant did not request or receive a waiver of the e-pay requirement or make an election to discontinue the e-pay requirement. Nor has he established reasonable cause for his failure to remit his payment electronically in this appeal. In summary, appellant's claim for refund was properly denied because he has had an e-pay requirement for over 14 years and has incurred and paid numerous e-pay penalties over the course of that time. Although the Franchise Tax Board is sympathetic to appellant's hardships, he has failed to establish reasonable cause for his failure to make his tax payment electronically. Accordingly, the appellant has not established any grounds to abate the e-pay penalty in this appeal, and the Franchise Tax Board respectfully requests that it be sustained. I would be happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Ramalingam. Judge Vasig or Judge Long, do you have any questions for a respondent?
I do not. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you.
I had a question. Mr. Taube submitted a waiver request in August of 2022. Before that time, did he ever submit a waiver request or make an election to discontinue e-payments?
Let me check one moment. He did not.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Taube, you indicated that you would like to make a final statement or a rebuttal to FTV's presentation. You have 5 minutes and may proceed when you're ready.
I think I've stated my why I'm here and my view on the purpose of an appeal process is, I gather, to make sure that the law is strictly enforced, and I understand, but also to make sure that it's not misapplied. I think that let's say $36,000 to process a check to me seems unduly burdensome. I've stated, why I believe that's the case, and my request is simply to be able to zoom out a bit and the appeal process do what I think it's meant to do, which is look at the application and the fairness of it. So I appreciate everything they've done, and thank you all for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Taube. Co-panelists, any final questions before we wrap up the hearing?
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you everyone for your participation today. This case is submitted on April 23rd, 2025. The record is now closed. My co-panelists and I will meet to deliberate and decide this appeal, and we will issue a written opinion within 100 days. Today's hearing and the appeal of Taube is now concluded. And since this is the last appeal of the day, the hearing is adjourned. And this concludes the hearing calendar for today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Take care.
you.